Have you ever wondered about the footage that gets shot for these videos that doesn't actually make the final edit? Hey everybody, welcome back to Cities Skylines, East Yorkshire. I think you know, and this is the city of Kingston, and that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. What you'll be seeing in the roughly first 4 minutes of this video is a build that I've been planning to do for a long time, and a build that once I finished I realized immediately should never continue to exist. And we're going to talk about why that is and what you can do to avoid similar things happening in your cities. So what you're seeing being built is the area next to the water just south of the main interchange of the highway coming into the city. This is an area that in Hull in real life is really quite similar. There is a large commercial complex just southwest of the city center with a massive parking lot in the middle and just a whole lot of shops and stores to visit. And for a while I've wanted to essentially mimic that in my city, but the immediate problem that happens is twofold. One, this is really close to the main interchange. And when you put any amount of large commercial in city skylines next to an interchange, you're going to get a lot of truck traffic. That is because, of course, the way the simulation works is that for commercial buildings, they need to get fed by goods, which is, pretty close to what it is in real life. But in the game, if you end up creating an area like this, and you'll see as I unpause the simulation, just how many trucks immediately begin streaming into this area. And what really happened was that I quickly realized I'm not sure if this is going to work. And I did kind of keep along with it and kept pushing. I decided to put in some small warehouses and fenced off areas next to the highway, and some of this is going to survive. So I do end up keeping all of these warehouses, and I do end up keeping the supermarket and the gas station. I threw in a fancy Waitrose, even though I don't believe Hull has one, or certainly doesn't have one anywhere close to the city center. But maybe the city is just a touch fancier than it is in real life, right? But the real problem was that I knew it wasn't going to work. I knew this amount of traffic was going to completely overclog that main interchange, which I need to be as free of cars as possible. So I was staying up late one night, going over the city in my head, thinking about what I could do to fix it, what I could do to change. And then I had a little bright idea to take this idea and move it and essentially mimic what the city in real life has next to the train station to fill in that huge gap we spoke about in the last episode. And if you haven't seen the last episode, go check it out. Thanks to a very successful Reddit post. That was probably my most watched video, at least most watched in those first few hours. And I was really excited to see that happen and see some new subscribers. So if you are new to the channel, thank you for joining in. And I'm hoping you're liking what you're seeing. And as we continue to see the last bits of footage from this area, just look at all those trucks and even the people, just the citizens and the Sims trying to cross over the main roundabout from the city center was creating more traffic than I realized. And now you'll see me start deleting it all. And I did get to keep in the supermarket, which I think really makes sense. And what you'll see at the end of the video is I don't leave this unfilled. I will go back in and fill in the rest of this area with housing. And housing always makes a lot more sense. If you're ever having a traffic problem in your city, housing is often the way to solve it. The way the game works, because the citizens don't always drive, they might walk, they might bike, they might use mass transit. A good way to solve a traffic problem is to look at an area that might be heavily industrial or commercial and think about making it residential instead. So the problem is, though, I still needed that commercial someplace, and I didn't want to hook up that commercial to anywhere close to any of my main city center roads. As you can tell, my main north-south road running in front of the train station is already really jam-packed with traffic. And if you saw last week's episode, you saw us build that roundabout to the northwest of the city, which functions fantastic and I'm really happy with. But if I were to put these commercial assets attached to the main road, the amount of traffic would be even more pronounced. So what I've done here is I've put in these large commercial buildings, and each of these I think has about 50 workers in it, which is quite a lot for the game. And when you're putting 6 of them in and having 300 jobs in one area, you're going to have a lot of pedestrian traffic and a lot of truck traffic. So what I've done is I've hooked up the road that they lay on and connected it to the back of the city center, so behind the train station, behind the bus depot. And some of the traffic to reach this area is still going to go through the main road, through the main roundabout, but a lot of it is taking alternate exits. The alternate exit on the highway and going up the overpass over the train tracks, and helping me split up and redistribute that traffic in a way that makes more sense for this map. And then what you're seeing is me trying to kind of give this a covered shopping center kind of appearance. I didn't like the look of the main road through the middle, even though it's completely necessary for functionality. I have limited that road to only allow truck traffic. But I really also wanted to hide the fencing and the pallets that kind of sit behind these assets. I think these are really nice assets. I'm not always crazy about the green roof. They do have a lot of additional like planters and bike racks and benches in front of them, and then all of the fencing behind them. So I want to really hide that as much as I can while still leaving it being a really fully functional, bustling commercial center. I also took a little bit of a look at, in this episode, what you're seeing now, for buses. I still think I need to do an entire episode of mass transit, but I'm starting to play around with it now and essentially trying to lessen my traffic load by forcing more citizens to take mass transit. To cover up the back end of this, on the right side of the shopping center, definitely needed a parking garage. Any large, massive shopping center is going to have a parking lot attached to it. Whether that's in Hull, whether that's in another UK city, or really any city anywhere, you're going to see this being very common. And I had to kind of play around a little bit with how this exactly works. Again, in this series, I'm always worried about functionality. Appearance matters, but I want everything in the city to be functional. So I end up deciding the road shouldn't go down the middle, it should go down the side. And then I kind of split the entrance to the shopping center where cars are allowed to come in and feed the parking garage, but only trucks are allowed to go down the main road into the shopping center. And look at the pedestrian path there. You can just see all of the citizens just streaming in. And I'm not done though. I think the biggest problem is their station shelters that I've put over the middle to kind of give it this, skylit pedestrian walkway. And I really do think it looks nice, but the way that these networks are set up, you can't edit the pillars. So I can't remove the pillars through any of the mods I currently have installed. And I think really the only way to get it to work and get rid of the pillars and then put in new pillars that I can control the height of would be to use procedural objects, which, if you remember way back from my first video, I don't use procedural objects. I think it's a fantastic way to add extra detail into the game, but it takes away from large building, it takes away from functionality sometimes, and I just never wanted the hassle of it. And I'm really debating whether I'm going to install it and use it a little bit in this series, if only for some occasional aspects. I really never intend to use it extensively, but if it does make that one area look better, I'm not against it. And if I don't though, those pillars that are kind of off the ground, or you can only really see it at one particular angle. So I think, from those overhead shots, that shopping center still looks really nice. And in the live play, and there will be a live play at about the 12-minute mark, you'll see that I ended up covering up more of that shopping center. So I ended up covering up the back end of it that faces the bus depot, and I did that with just a bunch of really small office assets, and I'm really happy with how that came out. And last but not least in this build, I needed to put something in that marina area. Well, maybe not the marina, but the coastline just west of where the marina is going to sit. And I've had these housing assets in my supply, in my asset list for a really long time, and I haven't had the chance to use many of them. And this is the first time where I looked at it and went, huh, I like these assets. These make sense for this area of the city. A little nicer, a little newer. You got to figure in this part of the city there might have previously been industrial or, you know, coastline type assets, and then at some point post-war, housing was built, this supermarket was built, and yeah, I think it just really makes sense. And got to throw a pub in as always, and I'll end up throwing a little bit more housing facing the street, and then just kind of blanketing the area with foliage, with ground level, with trees, just to kind of fill it in and give it that noise and visual separation from the highway, because this highway is only going to get busier, and I really don't want the housing there too terribly influenced by it. And I first laid it down like this and put in the housing facing each other, but it doesn't really make sense to have a front yard face a backyard. So I kind of flipped that around a little bit and ended up with just some more houses flipped around facing each other. And I really like these assets. They're a little finicky, and not all of them are fantastic, but for the most part, I think they really fit well for this part of the city, and I think I'll continue to use them elsewhere. Let me know where else you think these houses should be. But put that down in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, because in just a few seconds we're going to move into the live play, and we're going to be looking at that shopping center next to the train station once again, and trying to show you in detail the additional extras that have been added in. But thank you, as always, for sticking around, and let's dive into the live play. All right, and here we are back in the live play. Got a little movement going on. Always got to start out with the fully zoomed out image here. Want to show you as much of the city as possible. Front and center is that roundabout now, just chugging along, moving fantastic. But of course, I want to zoom in and show you two places today, two places that we built in the time lapse. So first off, let's first look at this little area just south of the main highway. And I think the biggest thing I got to call out here is it's a good start. You know, this entire area was really built in one episode previously, and I didn't get quite as much done in this episode, but I think this general look and feel for this slightly newer housing on the other side of the water is going to work really well in the future. I think I want to carry all of this housing over into this area, and with the start of the kind of warehousing and industrial area, I want to take that further west. And I'm not quite sure when I'll get to that. I've kind of been putting off marina and coastline work off in the past. It's just probably not the type of building that I'm best at, and I want to look at some more assets and think about it further before I really dive into that. But what I really focused on the most in this episode, and a lot of which you would not see in the time lapse that hasn't built off camera, is the area around this shopping center. So first off, like I mentioned, I blocked out all of these fenced-in areas with some really basic office buildings, and these office buildings only hold about 4 workers each, so they don't really overpower the area with people. And then just now off camera, I focused on some detail, built a little cafe in front of the shopping center with a little seating area, threw in some pillars to hide some of the ugliness that I might fix in the future with PO, and then got a little creative, wanted to fill in at least this corner over here and put in a bunch of this high capacity housing, which means that the city is now officially over 10,000 residents, which is awesome. It's what I've been wanting for a while. And as you see a train pulling in here, you can just see how busy the city is now. There are just people and cars everywhere, but my traffic rate is still around 75%, which I am more than happy with. And before we take a break and call this video over for the day, let's talk about what we want to do next. And I think I want to do the bridge next. This is something I've been putting off for a while, completely neglecting this side of the city, but I think it's time. Let me know down in the comments, is this what you want to see next? Because I am more than happy to build a nice, impressive bridge here with some nice interchanges. I think I could really bring a lot of life into the city, and I think I might actually bring this over, maybe a little bit more here where the land juts out. I think that'll make more sense, but you know, once I do build the bridge here, that's going to put the pressure on me to start filling in these areas and really this side of the city with a hospital and just a lot more housing and just growth, growth, growth. That's what I want to see now. I want the city to keep building and keep growing. And yeah, because we only got maybe 10 episodes left, something like that, which is crazy to think about. But we're going to keep going. We're going to keep building. And I hope to see you around in the next episode of Cities Skylines East Yorkshire. Thank you as always, and goodbye.